A hip-hop husband just detonated his entire legacy on the internet, live, unscripted, no second take, and the most terrifying part isn't what he said. It's that he thought it was gonna work. Because while the woman he married is in a gym right now wrapping her hands, bleeding, sweating, sacrificing everything for a $15 million legacy, her husband is on his phone, for stories deep, same dusty hat, begging the algorithm for a courtside seat and calling it loyalty. Here's what nobody has put together yet. This wasn't an accident. This was a trap. And Papoose walked straight into it. Stay with me. By the end of this, you will never see him the same way again. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Jamil Mackey Papoose went on his Instagram story during the 2026 NBA playoffs and posted a multi-part public plea directed at strangers, his wife Claressa Shields, and Victor Wembanyama, begging for floor seats to a Knicks playoff game at Madison Square Garden, seats listed at over $100,000. This dropped while Shields was in training camp for a $15 million fight with Laila. Instead of a private DM, he made it a full production for the algorithm. What you're about to see isn't a man begging for a ticket. It's a man who got played by his own playbook. Let's lay out exactly what happened, word for word, frame for frame, because every piece of this is a different kind of evidence. On his Instagram story, Papoose went on record and said, and I'm quoting directly, "I'm a real New Yorker. I grew up watching Patrick Ewing, John Starks, Allen Houston, Charlie Ward, Anthony Mason, rest in peace, Chris Childs, Oakley. I need to be in that building. Yo." When I first read this, I had to set the phone down and walk a lap. Because what Papoose just did is use the greatest collection of Knicks heartbreak in franchise history, the '94 finals, Starks going 2 for 18 in Game 7, the Reggie Miller curse, all of it as a fundraising pitch. He weaponized 3 decades of New York suffering as a GoFundMe hook. That's not a fan. That's a man who learned that trauma is attention currency and is cashing a check he didn't earn. Then, reportedly, the very next video, same hat, same energy, he looked into the camera and addressed Victor Wembanyama directly. Allegedly, Wemby Monday, you gotta come to the concrete jungle. I had to rewind that. He is calling out a 22-year-old French basketball player, a man who does not know his government name, who has never mentioned him in any context, ever, on any platform, and invoking him like they got a mutual agreement. Like Wemby is sitting in San Antonio scrolling Instagram stories at midnight waiting for a rap verse from 2005 to speak to his soul. Bro, Wemby does not know you. He never did. He never will. Let it go. And then, this is the part that made my jaw drop, he reportedly reposted his own plea video. Multiple times. In under 48 hours. He watched the view count plateau, decided the algorithm was sleeping on his masterpiece, and hit repost like he was Quincy Jones remastering a classic. A grown 47-year-old man, husband of a world champion, reposting his own thirst trap because the first one didn't hit hard enough. That's not hustle. That's panic wearing a Knicks fitted. Now let's talk about the financial context, because Papoose himself handed us this receipt without realizing it. He acknowledged, on his own story, that floor seats to this game were topping $100,000. He said it. He volunteered that number. And then, in the same breath, instead of that number making him pause and think, maybe this isn't a realistic ask in a public forum, he doubled down. He tripled down. He kept filming. He kept reposting. He kept addressing Wembanyama. The receipts aren't just what he said, they're what he kept doing after he already knew it wasn't working. That's the behavior pattern. That's the tell. And we're gonna break that tell all the way down. Now that we've seen the receipts, let me show you what nobody connected yet, because the timing of all of this is where this thing gets truly wild. Here's what the surface-level commentary missed. Everyone's talking about what Papoose said. Nobody's talking about the sequence of when he said it. And in this situation, the timing is the whole case. Claressa Shields, preparing for a $15 million payday against Laila, is at this exact moment in a full, walls closing in training camp. And right in the middle of that, her husband chose this window to post a multi-episode public performance about needing a luxury basketball ticket. He knows she's inaccessible. He knows she can't respond in the moment. So he went to the only audience that was available, the internet. Now here's what makes the timeline even more damning. The Knicks' playoff run in 2026 didn't sneak up on anybody. This team has been building for years, Jalen Brunson carrying the franchise with a quiet, no-nonsense demeanor that Papoose apparently finds deeply aspirational. The point is, Pap has had months to plan for this. Months to save. months to reach out to the right people through the right channels. Instead, he waited until Game 3, until the electricity was out of 10, until the whole world was watching New York hold its breath, and then he turned on the camera. That timing tells you this isn't about a basketball game. The basketball game is the backdrop. The real performance was always for the audience watching the backdrop. There's another layer here that nobody caught. Y'all didn't catch this. Papoose's entire brand, the Lost series, the mixtape grind, every bar he ever spat, has been built on thoroughness. On doing the work. On being methodical and relentless. That's the DNA of his artistic identity. So, what does it mean when the man whose whole brand is preparation shows up to the biggest cultural moment of his city's sports calendar with no plan, no ticket, no budget, no access, just a camera and a plea? It means the brand and the behavior aren't matching. And when a man's brand stops matching his behavior, he's in a crisis he hasn't named yet. We're gonna name it in a second. And one more timing note. Floor seats at MSG for a game at this level were at $100,000 on the secondary market before tip-off. That's not a surprise, that's a known commodity. Promoters, managers, label executives, and sports agents had access weeks in advance through channels that don't involve Instagram stories. The fact that Pap went public instead of going private through the industry infrastructure he theoretically has access to tells you something important about where he actually sits in that infrastructure right now. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because when you zoom in close on what he actually said, there are layers nobody peeled back yet. Let's get under the microscope, because the words Papoose chose are not random. They're a psychological fingerprint. And I want to break down 3 specific elements that tell us everything about what's actually going on in his head. Hidden layer 1, the Ewing invocation. When Papoose listed Patrick Ewing, John Starks, Allen Houston, Charlie Ward, Anthony Mason, Chris Childs, Oakley, he wasn't naming players. He was building a shrine. An emotional altar designed to make the listener feel the weight of 30 years of suffering, so that by the time he got to the ask, it would feel like a just reward. That is a rhetorical technique. A real fan doesn't list the 94 roster as a credential. That's a lawyer's opening argument. Pap built a case, stacked exhibits, and worked toward a verdict, you owe me. The problem is, nobody in the jury pool felt that debt. The entire case was based on a bill nobody remembers signing. Hidden layer 2, the Wembanyama address. I need y'all to focus on this one, because this is the most revealing detail in the whole story. Papoose didn't just mention Wemby in passing. He addressed him directly. Personally. He said, Wemby Monday, you gotta come to the concrete jungle. Now, on the surface, that reads like hype. Knicks fan hyping up the matchup. But forensically zoom in. What does it do for Papoose to address Wemby by name directly on a public platform? It creates the illusion of proximity. It signals to the audience, I exist in a world where I can speak to 22-year-old French NBA superstars directly, and they might hear me. That's not enthusiasm. That's a status performance. He's not talking to Wemby. He's talking past Wemby at the audience, watching him talk to Wemby. The target was never Wembanyama. The target was always the comment section. And Papoose didn't even realize he revealed that in real time. That's the tell. That's the crack in the facade. And Papoose really didn't catch that, because if he had, he never would have posted it. Hidden layer 3, the repost. This one is the quietest detail and the loudest signal. When Papoose reposted his own plea, when he looked at the engagement, watched it stall, and chose to amplify it again, he revealed the core architecture of the whole operation. This was never about a ticket. A man who genuinely needed a ticket would have one quiet DM or one phone call as the play. The repost is only necessary if the exposure is the product. He's not selling a need. He's selling a story about a need. He's manufacturing a narrative in real time and then boosting the production when it underperforms. That is a content creator's behavior, not a fan's behavior. And that distinction? That right there is the entire trial in one move. If you still think Papoose has a point after all of this, that's a you problem. Because the receipts, the timeline, and the forensics all point in one direction. Let's see how the media played this, because the spin is wild. Now, the commentary world had a field day with this story, but here's the thing, they all stopped at the same shallow shore. And I need to show you where their narratives fall apart, because that's how we get to the real story. The first wave of coverage from the hip-hop gossip channels, the shade room tier, the reaction content, framed this entirely as a broke joke. Papoose can't afford tickets, Claressa won't pay. That was the headline. That was the thumbnail. That was the 60-second TikTok. And look, I understand it. It's clean. It's shareable. It fits a template people already know. But what that framing completely missed, and remember, we already broke down the timeline, is that this isn't a money story. Papoose is not broke. He's been in hip-hop for 20-plus years. He's married to a $15 million fighter. The money to attend a Knicks game exists somewhere in that household. So the broke narrative, while funny, is a distraction. And media ran with the distraction because the real story required more than 60 seconds to tell. The second wave of framing, from slightly more nuanced commentators, pushed the thirsty husband angle. He's embarrassing himself. He should let his wife shine. Closer. Warmer. But still missing the engine. Because the question they never asked is, why now? Why this specific moment? Why this level of public spectacle for something as fixable as a basketball ticket? Why not a quiet ask, a favor called in, a DM to the right promoter? The thirsty husband frame makes Pap look impulsive. But what we built in parts A, B, and C tells a different story. This was methodical. This was layered. The repost alone tells you there was a strategy. Impulsive men don't run analytics on their own desperation. Now some people, and I've been watching the comments, are coming to Pap's defense, saying he's just a real fan who loves his team and wanted to be there for a historic moment. And I hear that. That's a human argument. But here's why it falls apart against what we already established. Remember the Ewing invocation forensics? Remember that the entire plea was structured like a legal argument with emotional exhibits? Real fans don't build legal arguments. They build memories. Pap built a pitch deck wearing a Knicks hat. Those are different activities. The defenders are defending the emotion. They're not defending the behavior. And the behavior, the stacking, the reposting, the Wemby address, the public forum over a private ask, that behavior has a specific shape. And that shape is the forbidden take, which nobody else online has named yet. But I'm about to. Because the truth they won't put on the news is coming right now. The mainstream narrative is, Papoose embarrassed himself begging for a ticket his wife could buy him. That's the consensus. That's what everyone agreed on and went home with. Here's what they won't tell you. Papoose did not walk into a humiliation. He engineered one. Deliberately. And the target was never the ticket was bait. This is psychological warfare turned inward. A man who used his own public embarrassment as a content play. And what makes it devastating is that it didn't work. Here's the real angle. Papoose is a rapper whose commercial prime is over a decade behind him. He knows it. The culture has moved on to artists who were in middle school when his best tapes dropped. In a landscape where relevance decays by the second, where being talked about is worth more than being respected, a calculated public spectacle is one of the last tools available. So he manufactured one. He chose a moment when the entire city's attention was pointed at Madison Square Garden, lit a match, I need $100,000 ticket, someone help, and dropped it in the most flammable content environment on the internet. Then he fanned it with the repost. He was not begging for access to a building. He was engineering access to a news cycle. And the Knicks' playoff run was just the most visible vehicle available. Now here's where it collapses into tragedy. Psychological warfare only works when the target takes the bait. When Pap addressed Wemby directly, he needed Wemby to respond, or the crowd to react like he might. Wemby didn't blink. When he listed the 94 roster as credentials, he needed the audience to feel the emotional debt. They said, "We don't got it, Pap." When he reposted the plea, he needed the second wave to hit harder. It plateaued. Every single pressure point came back cold. And here's the thing about a psychological warfare play that misfires. The blowback lands on the architect. Because the audience doesn't see the strategy. They see the desperation. And when the move fails, the man is all that's left standing in front of the camera. Alone. In the same dusty hat. Papoose is playing checkers in a game that already moved to chess. The entire architecture of what he built, the emotional exhibits, the celebrity address, the amplification loop, that's a playbook that worked in 2015. It worked when going viral was still a novelty, when a public plea from a known name could generate genuine momentum, when the algorithm rewarded sentiment over speed. In 2026, the internet has seen every version of this move 1,000 times. It has antibodies. The audience clocks it before the second sentence. They don't feel the emotion of the Ewing invocation, they identify it as an Ewing invocation. They don't feel sympathy for the Wemby address, they clock it as a status performance. The trap that was supposed to catch the audience caught the trapper instead. He walked straight into it. And he's still walking, which is somehow the saddest part of all. And here's the darkest layer. The most dangerous consequence of this miscalculation isn't the ridicule that fades in 48 hours. The dangerous consequence is what this does to the most real thing Pap has left, his reputation as a genuine New York Knicks fan. That fandom is documented. It predates Instagram. It predates all of this. And now, because he turned it into a content play, because he used a generation of real heartbreak as a fundraising exhibit, he's permanently attached an asterisk to the one credential nobody could have taken from him. The love was real. The performance of the love is manufactured. And once you perform a real thing, the audience can never fully separate the performance from the thing itself. He didn't need a seat. He needed a signal. The universe sent one back. Just not the one he was broadcasting for. And that is the truth they won't put on the news. So where does this go from here? Let me tell you exactly what's coming, and I want you to screenshot this section, because I'm gonna be right. Claressa Shields is gonna win that fight against Laila Ali. She's gonna walk out of that ring with another belt, another check, another chapter added to a legacy that is already the greatest in women's boxing history. And when she does, the entire conversation around this household is gonna reframe itself automatically, because Claressa's moment is going to be so massive, so undeniable, so culturally significant that everything around it becomes a footnote. Including the Knicks ticket situation. Including the story we just told. Papoose is gonna be standing in the front row of that post-fight press conference, smiling, supportive, repping the Knicks hat, and the internet is gonna let it go. Not because he earned forgiveness. Because Claressa's gravity is strong enough to pull the narrative back to her no matter what orbits around it. That's the real power in that household. And the moment Pap stops fighting it, he might actually be okay. But if he keeps fishing for his own spotlight while she's holding a solar flare, he's not ready for what that contrast is gonna look like over time. If Papoose decides to respond to this moment by doubling down, more stories, more pleas, more Wemby addresses, more reposting his own content, watch what happens. The algorithm is going to deliver him exactly what he's chasing, except it's going to come in the wrong form. He's going to trend. Not as a cultural figure. Not as a lyricist. As a meme. As a character. The internet is very good at turning a real person into a recurring bit, and right now Papoose is one viral edit away from being the guy in the dusty Knicks hat forever. If he drops another video in that same hat, talking about the same ticket with the same desperate energy, mark my words, the comment section is going to produce something that follows him for the rest of his career. The internet doesn't forget, and it especially doesn't forgive a man who gave it the same content twice. He's not ready for that level of cultural calcification. Nobody is. Scenario 3. The long-term cultural shockwave. 5 years from now, this moment is going to be remembered as one of the clearest examples of what the relevance crisis looks like for hip-hop artists of a certain era in a post-algorithm world. Not specifically Papoose, the broader phenomenon. The men who built real legacies in the pre-streaming, pre-social media era, who now have to navigate a content landscape that was designed for people 20 years younger, who are watching the culture move at a speed that doesn't accommodate legacy. Papoose is going to be in a documentary about this. Not as the villain. As the case study. The man who turned his own fandom into a content strategy and discovered too late that the internet charges compound interest on authenticity debt. That documentary is being written right now in real time. And the Knicks hat is gonna be in the thumbnail. Whatever happens, one thing is already decided. Papoose already lost the moment this started. Not because he asked for a ticket. Because he turned the ask into a show, and the show didn't land, and the audience has a longer memory than any algorithm. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss when we expose what everyone else is too scared to say. Ring that bell for notifications. And if you want more truth bombs like this, click on one of these videos next. Trust me, you'll want to see what we found.